Ariana sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale from the pressure. The wood-paneled walls, the murmurs of the press just outside, and the judge's distant voice all seemed to blur into a hum. But inside her mind, everything was sharp, crystal clear. The memory of that night, the silence she kept, the truth she was finally ready to say. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She was America's sweetheart, the pop princess with a silver voice and a smile that masked more than anyone could ever imagine. No one knew that behind the platinum albums and the sold-out tours, she carried a story too painful to sing about. Until today. As her name was called to the stand, she stood slowly, her heels echoing on the courtroom floor like a countdown to something irreversible. Diddy sat just feet away, stone-faced, flanked by his high-profile legal team. He didn't look at her, not once, but she looked straight ahead, not at him, not at the jury, but somewhere distant, somewhere real. She raised her right hand and took the oath. The courtroom was silent, holding its breath. "I was 21, she began, her voice clear but restrained. "It was an after-party. I was invited by someone I trusted, someone I thought was looking out for me. I didn't know who else would be there. I didn't know what kind of room I was walking into. There were no cameras inside, but every eye present, from the jury to the reporters, to the court sketch artist, was locked on her. They didn't blink, not once. And Diddy, he shifted for the first time, just slightly. I remember the music being too loud," she continued. "I remember the way people looked at me, like I was something already owned." She paused, a deep breath, a glance downward. "I didn't say anything for a long time because I thought maybe that's just how things were, that maybe I was the one being naive. But then I saw other girls, younger than me, looking up to me, and I realized if I stayed silent, I was part of it too." A few jurors looked visibly shaken. One wiped a tear. The judge didn't interrupt. Ariana's testimony wasn't just a recounting of an experience, it was a reckoning. She described not just a moment, but a pattern, a culture, a silence so loud it echoed in every dressing room and backroom deal in the industry. And before we dive deeper into this unforgettable story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way you'll never miss another thought-provoking documentary just like this. Now let's get back to it. The courtroom, for all its rigidity, felt like it had turned into a confessional. As Ariana described the days after, the texts that went unanswered, the whispers from insiders warning her to stay quiet, the projects that suddenly got canceled. It was clear this wasn't just about what happened one night. It was about power, about fear, about the cost of truth. "I didn't come here today to ruin anyone," she said, finally turning to look in Diddy's direction. "I came here to free myself." And in that moment, she wasn't a pop star. She wasn't a headline. She was a woman who had carried the unbearable weight of silence for far too long, and decided to set it down in the most public way imaginable. Outside the courtroom, the world waited for her words, but inside she had already spoken the loudest truth of her life. The moment Ariana stepped down from the witness stand, it felt like the air inside the courtroom shifted, as if something had cracked open, something that had been sealed tight for years. The judge called for a brief recess, but no one moved. Not the reporters scribbling frantic notes, not the courtroom artist frozen in mid-sketch, not even Diddy, who remained perfectly still, staring at the spot where Ariana had just stood, as though he hadn't expected her to actually say it. She didn't go back to the gallery. Instead, she was led through a side door, away from the flashes, away from the whispers. Her body language, though guarded, still carried a kind of weightless relief. It was the look of someone who had finally told a story she never thought she'd be allowed to tell. Meanwhile, the prosecution team stayed huddled together, clearly recalibrating. Ariana's testimony had landed harder than anyone had predicted. It wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. She had walked the jury through her experience with such poise, such precision, that even the most skeptical observer had been forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the case. But the defense wasn't done. When the judge reconvened the court, Diddy's lead attorney rose slowly. He was known for dismantling witnesses, especially celebrity ones. He adjusted his glasses, stepped toward the center of the room, and with a calm voice addressed the court. "We'd like to cross-examine Miss Grande." There was a low murmur in the gallery. Ariana returned to the stand. Her expression didn't waver. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and waited. "Miss Grande," the lawyer began, "you said this event happened several years ago. Do you recall exactly when?" "Yes," she replied calmly. "I do." He nodded. "And yet you never filed a report, never mentioned it publicly, never even spoke about it in any interviews, is that correct?" "That's correct." He leaned in slightly. "Why now?" There it was, the question everyone wanted to ask, but few had the courage to. Ariana blinked once. "Because I was scared," she said, "and because I thought no one would believe me. And maybe for a while, I convinced myself it was better to forget. But seeing others come forward, hearing the stories, I realized that my silence wasn't protecting me. It was protecting him." There was no bravado in her voice, no performance, just raw, unfiltered truth, and it rattled even the most hardened court watchers. The defense lawyer tried to pivot. "You're aware that this testimony could impact your career, your fan base, your endorsements." "I'm aware," she said, "but I've already paid that price privately. This is about something bigger." From the corner of the courtroom, Diddy remained expressionless, but his hands, previously clasped tightly together, were now resting flat against the table, as if bracing for something more. "And these messages you mentioned," the attorney continued, "the ones you claim came from Mr. Combs's team, do you have them with you? I gave them to the prosecution months ago. They've been authenticated. And to be clear," he added, "you're accusing my client of—" "I'm not accusing," Ariana interrupted, her voice firm now. "I'm telling you what happened, what I lived through. You can call it what you want." The room was still. Even the judge seemed momentarily caught in the intensity of the exchange. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, the prosecution stood and introduced a surprise witness, a longtime industry insider who had worked with both Ariana and Diddy during the time in question. The courtroom collectively inhaled. Would this new voice support Ariana's account or unravel it? But the real question lingering in everyone's mind wasn't about facts or dates. It was about courage. How many others had stayed quiet? How many had stories just like hers, trapped behind NDAs, threats, or worse? Ariana wasn't just a pop star anymore. She had become something far more dangerous in that courtroom, believable. And the ripple of that belief was only beginning to spread. The courtroom doors opened again, and in walked the surprise witness, a woman in her late 40s, dressed in a dark navy blazer, her hair pulled back tightly, her eyes steady. Her name was Melissa Crane. For over 20 years, she had worked behind the scenes in the music industry as a talent liaison, managing interactions between artists, producers, and major label executives. Ariana looked up as Melissa passed her on the way to the witness stand. Their eyes met. Ariana gave the slightest nod. Melissa took her seat, adjusted the microphone, and waited. The prosecution wasted no time. "Ms. Crane," the lead prosecutor began, "can you tell the court how you're connected to both Ms. Grande and Mr. Combs?" She inhaled slowly. "I was working for Republic Records as a senior liaison when Ariana signed with them. Around the same time, I was occasionally contracted for events tied to Mr. Combs and his affiliates." "So you were present during some of these private industry gatherings?" "Yes," she replied, her voice calm but resolute, "including the event Ariana just testified about." A pin could have dropped and echoed for minutes. The prosecutor stepped closer. "And what did you witness that night?" Melissa paused, choosing her words carefully. "I saw a very young Ariana arrive. She was excited, trusting. I remember her being ushered into a private lounge area with other high-profile guests, including Mr. Combs. At one point, I noticed she looked visibly uncomfortable. She tried to leave the room twice. Each time, someone from Diddy's circle intercepted her. I found it unsettling." The defense immediately objected, claiming hearsay, but the judge allowed the statement to stand, citing the relevance and Melissa's direct professional involvement. "What happened next?" the prosecutor asked. "I followed her to the restroom about 30 minutes later," Melissa said. "She was sitting on the floor, holding her phone, shaking. I asked if she was okay. She said she wasn't, but begged me not to tell anyone. I didn't press. I was scared for her, and honestly, I was scared for myself. Ariana looked down, her jaw tightening. It was clear she remembered that moment too. Why didn't you speak up then? The prosecutor asked gently. Melissa blinked hard. Because people who spoke up didn't last in the industry. You got blacklisted, discredited. I had 2 kids in college. I chose survival, but I never stopped thinking about that night. When I saw Ariana's name on the witness list, I knew I couldn't keep silent any longer. The defense shifted uncomfortably. Diddy whispered something to his attorney, who shook his head. Now it was the defense's turn. They approached slowly. Ms. Crane, you're saying that this one moment, years ago, stuck with you so deeply that you're testifying here today? Yes, but you never reported it, never documented it, never followed up with Ariana after that night. I didn't, she admitted, and I live with that. Do you consider yourself responsible for what happened? Melissa's voice cracked for the first time. But I do believe I was a witness to the start of something she never should have had to endure alone. The defense attorney pivoted again, this time questioning Melissa's objectivity, her motivations. You understand how significant this testimony is, correct? You understand the damage this could do to Mr. Combs' reputation, to his legacy? Melissa looked directly at the jury. He already did that damage himself. I'm just no longer willing to pretend I didn't see it. And with that, the room fell into a quiet that was heavier than any sound. In the back of the gallery, one of the jurors dabbed her eyes. The sketch artist had long stopped drawing and was simply watching. The judge leaned forward, fingers steepled, his eyes narrowing as if beginning to see the bigger picture. Ariana didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just watched. She had waited years for someone to validate what she remembered, what she carried. And now, in a moment that no one could have scripted, someone finally did. The truth, once a whisper, was beginning to roar. The courtroom emptied for lunch, but no one really left, not in their minds. The conversation spilled into the marble hallways and echoed through phones, whispered in group texts, splashed across live blogs and breaking news banners. Melissa Crane's testimony had shaken something loose, something people had long suspected, but never heard confirmed by someone on the inside. And yet, despite the intensity, Ariana remained composed. Seated quietly in the small private consultation room beside her attorney, she sipped water and stared at the grain of the wooden table. Not out of fear, but focus. She wasn't finished. The break was short, too short. When court resumed, there was an electric sense of anticipation, a storm about to break. The judge re-entered, followed by the jury, and then, unexpectedly, the prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, at this time, with the court's permission, we'd like to recall Ms. Grande to the stand for clarification. Whispers swirled like a gust through the gallery. Ariana stood without hesitation. This time she wasn't walking in with trembling hands or uncertain eyes. She knew why she was there. As she settled back into the witness chair, her voice no longer held the hesitancy of a wounded memory. It held the steel of someone who had finally found the words. I want to say one more thing, she began, before the prosecutor could even speak. The judge nodded. Ariana leaned slightly toward the mic. When I was first asked to testify, I thought about saying no. I thought about how it might hurt my career, how people would spin my story, how it might bring more pain than peace. But when I started remembering everything, the rooms, the conversations, the silence afterward, I realized the fear I felt wasn't about what had happened. It was about who might still be benefiting from my silence. You could feel the weight of that sentence land on everyone like a dropped stone in still water. There was one night, she continued, just days after the event I talked about, when I was scheduled to record vocals for a major collaboration. My name was removed from the project at the last second. No explanation, no apology. Later I found out, quietly off the record, that it was because I wasn't easy to manage, that I had mood issues. She paused. Her voice didn't crack. Not anymore. I wasn't difficult. I was scared. And someone didn't like that I said no. The prosecution guided her next. Did you ever confront Mr. Combs directly after that? But his team made